Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to an unscheduled live stream, CrimeTime with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. I've got my co-host joining me, amazing Ant. We have breaking news. Indictments have come down finally, 60 some odd days later, in the murder of Robert Brooks. Robert Brooks was murdered in Marcy Correctional Facility on December 9th, 2024. And it took all of this time for the prosecutor, the district attorney over at Onondaga, the Oneida County grand jury convened on Monday this week that just passed, and they came down with indictments. It seems like from early reports, up to 9 correctional officers are listed in this indictment. That means they will be charged with some sort of charges as it pertains to the murder of Robert Brooks. We do not have the indictment. It's unsealed. It's not publicly available, but I have to believe that this is going to be murder charges for the people who put their hands. And we watched with our own eyes on video this man being murdered, his life snuffed out by New York State Department of Correctional officers. White officers took the life of a black inmate, and it just is just sickening. It's sickening because it took this long for justice to come, but I'm thankful. I'm thankful to God that they have indictments here. Ant, how you doing? How's everything going with you and your thoughts on this?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here on the Unexpected Live. First and foremost, I just want to say, again, my condolences to the Brooks family. We are fighting, and I think it's being heard. We are fighting tirelessly to put the voice out there to speak for him, even in his death and his horrible, I don't even have the words, horrible death. He was murdered. The world saw it, or the world will see it now that the indictments come down. And we're here to continue fighting for justice for Brooks in his death and for future inmates who are humans. And in this month of love, we have to remember that God is love, and however people believe, it is up to us to be kind, to be just, and to have integrity so that this does not happen again, and to speak up when you see injustice being done, just like DutyRon is doing here.
Amen, sister. Yeah, we watched it on video, and that was what made it so shocking to see that with our own eyes. You know, we hear about injustices, we hear about brutality behind the walls, but you know, you're going to hear from tonight former inmates who are going to join us that talk about correction officers as a whole. And it's not the whole group of men and women who do this job that are doing these heinous things. This is a minority that's behind the walls in corrections, probably obviously across the United States.
Yes.
But that minority needs to be weeded out, and they need to be locked up and get removed from being inside the correctional facilities. But let's listen to the reports. This is from yesterday.
Tonight we are learning about a major development in the deadly beating case of Marcy prison inmate Robert Brooks. We're following reports that a grand jury in Oneida County has now handed up a sealed indictment against corrections officers involved in his death. As CBS 6's Brianna Sapardi reports, it's a key step toward prosecution.
More than 2 months after Robert Brooks was brutally beaten by corrections officers, a grand jury has handed up a sealed indictment marking a pivotal step toward criminal charges. This development was reported by the Times-Union. The sealed indictment means the grand jury has found enough to bring charges to those involved in his death. But for now, the indictment remains sealed, meaning the details, including the charges and the names of those involved, are still confidential.
Indictment needs to be
confidential.
I want to just put it back here for a second, and we'll listen to this thing in its entirety, this report.
Yes.
But right here, we can see this is towards the end of the 10 minutes. It took 10 minutes for these correction monsters to take the life of Robert Brooks. But here we have 4 correction officers, plus a sergeant here, and then another sergeant that's off frame. This is actually a sergeant's camera. Sergeant Michael Mashal and Sergeant Glenn Trombley is, I believe, on this side.
Who's the light blue? Who's that guy?
So I'm not 100% sure on his name, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 in here. As far as I have heard, this is from boots on the ground, people in the community, folks who are attached to this thing, that 9 indictments. It could be wrong, but this is unconfirmed. 9 indictments have been
it is confirmed.
So here's 6 of 9, as we see in this report here, and we're going to play the full video if I can get it to roll.
Okay.
And we're going to play the full thing. And just as a disclaimer to any of you folks who suffer from PTSD, this needs to be played. This full video, we need to watch it again, because on Tuesday the 18th, the indictments will come down, and we need to see these monsters' faces. And we know from our friend Sean from Long Island Audit, he went out to the home of one of these correctional officers, right? Anthony Farina, right? And you were on that live stream with
and he
me.
brought his son out, the correction officer, involved his family.
This guy right here, Anthony Farina, and his son told Sean to get it. His son told him, get out of here. And then when Sean said, your father beat and murdered Robert Brooks on video, he said, no, he didn't.
Mohawk did.
It happened at Mohawk.
Yep.
So I uploaded that video just yesterday. So those of you who want to see it, it's in my playlist. Go over and check it out. I'll let the rest of this play.
Meaning the details, including the charges and the names of those involved, are still confidential.
Indictment needs to be unsealed, and it typically is done when they appear for the first time or are arrested. So I would anticipate that they've already agreed to appear or voluntarily appear on Tuesday for arraignment.
This indictment is reportedly set to be unsealed on Tuesday in Oneida County Court. 17 officers and 2 nurses have been implicated in his death, which has been ruled a homicide by the Oneida County Medical Examiner's Office. Video of the brutal beating was captured on the officers' body cameras and released publicly in December by the Attorney General. You saw the full video as it was released only on 6.
But the potential for as many people involved, I would assume it would filter down into the number of them as people accept plea bargain agreements. Everybody, I would assume there'd be different levels of bargaining based.
I got to say, this conversation between this news reporter and this local attorney, it's got people in an uproar. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
She's talking about plea bargains. And
already.
Nobody wants to hear, I'm going to put us back on. Nobody wants to hear a goddamn plea bargain here, because everybody that was inside and outside that room, including those 2 nurses that were sitting there and smiling and making funny faces. And I got word that one of those nurses was not an employee of New York State, was a contracted nurse.
Oh.
Now, that in fact is true. That contracted nurse, his license should have been pulled. Both of them should have been pulled, their licenses, and they should be facing charges, because the onus is on them, even though we know that they're up against these bullies and it's hard for them to say, hey, wait a minute, stop, guys. But they should have. They still should have done that, but they didn't. And for the fact that they didn't, they should be facing charges. The bottom line is this reporter here is talking to an attorney, and she's talking about that they have to be arraigned on the charges. So some of you in the audience will say, DutyRon, Amazing Ant, what are these indictments? What are these indictments? These you want to take it, Sarge?
So let's just pause a minute. It just sounds like ambulance chaser. No attorney, in my opinion, should be commenting on a plea bargain when the indictment hasn't been released and we don't even know what the charges are. So off the bat, that's ambulance chasing. You saw they had her name of the firm, the company, and she's already advertising. So right there, no good. We need the indictments. But I will tell you this, if 9 indictments came down, I better believe there's going to be murder, aggravated, everything attached to it. But like we said, with the federal civil rights, with the George Floyd case, the people who didn't take action, there's only 6 people right here on him. The other 3 are going to be held culpable if it goes the way we said it would with the federal rights also. Yeah.
There's a total of 18 or 19 people named because a female sergeant came in the room as well, and a male. So let's let the rest of this play, but it's got people up in arms big time.
On 6.
But the potential for as many people involved, I would assume it would filter down into the number of them as people accept plea bargain agreements. Everybody, I would assume there'd be different levels of bargaining based on involvement.
Legal experts believe some defendants may seek plea deals.
This is Robert Brooks' father.
Yes.
Great man. Just my heart breaks for him because he is of the belief that if his family just gets a check out of this thing and a settlement and nothing happens and no change comes about, then his son has died in vain. You know, he said, I want change
Yes.
for all inmates going forward, so this never happens again. So there he is, Mr. Ricks, and I give lots of props to him, Reverend Ricks. He runs a great program for the youth. I spoke with Robert Brooks' cousin, Eileen. She's a super sweetheart, and she's got a big heart of gold. These are all good people.
In exchange for testifying against others, Brooks' death has ignited outrage and calls for justice, highlighting concerns about use of force and oversight.
So this man got up in front of a council. Yeah, I believe this was inside of Albany, and he said, I'm sick and tired of this, and he was escorted out. But I watched the full unedited version of this, and he had some choice words for them, and it was good that he did that. But yeah, and so they're going to be arraigned on these charges, and the indictments are charges. So whether they are murder, second degree, people were talking to me on instant message yesterday, on direct message. Why isn't it first degree? New York State, you need a lot of different components for murder in the first degree. And we're not going to get into that, but we're going to tell you that second degree murder carries 25 to life. That's the sentence, 25 to life in the state of New York.
Can we go back to his father real quickly?
Yeah.
When he was hugging the woman who was hugging him, you said something very profound that I think is why everyone is here. Money, you can't, what did they say? You can't buy love with money, right? And, civil rights, people think, oh, they got a good lawsuit, like a car accident or something. Oh, I hope you got a good lawyer, you'll settle big. It doesn't take away the pain of something as small as a car accident and the pain you sustain. But a murder, you cannot bring back his son. His father is right. This is about change. No amount of money is going to fix what happened. But even more importantly, no amount of money is going to fix the future for future Brooks, God forbid, cases. So This is really profound that this case is, I pray, going to make change once these indictments come down, whether it's second degree murder, first degree murder, everyone else acting in concert, because that should have happened a long time ago. So now we're wondering, as we're here, why the big delay? Why did they and we'll talk about this further in the show, why did they let these correction employees retire before the indictment? So it even shows that the system, and I hate to talk like this, the system is broken and corrupt, and Lady Justice is no longer blind.
Yeah.
They are picking and choosing who they're protecting, who they're serving. Oh, give them some hush-hush money. Oh, let's assume their socioeconomic status. No, that's not the point. So with these indictments, I'm really praying that not only would it unveil what we already saw on video, but it will send a message to future killers of inmates or people. You cannot do this no matter how much money they pay to cover it up.
Ann, there's so much conversation.
No, sorry, I get so passionate.
The corrections commissioner was grilled at a hearing just a short time ago, and he said that because of the collective bargaining agreement,
right,
they're unable to, for a period of time, do anything to these guys.
But they let them retire,
which is outrageous. You shouldn't let them. They should be frozen in time. Then they should not be allowed to call their shots and say, "Oh, let me put my papers in, let me secure my pension, and let me be nice and comfortable." Because if any of us, if you or I, we're civilians, if our guests that are waiting to come in with us committed any type of crime like this, where it was captured on video, and we wouldn't be allowed to be walking free for 60 some odd days. We wouldn't be able to sit at home with our families and celebrate Christmas and New Year's and Valentine's Day. These people are walking around when they are on video, snuffing the life of Robert Brooks on body cam footage. That's the travesty of justice here. And that's what makes this a real fucking shit show, is because we watched with our own eyes these monsters murder a human being. And I don't care what he was in there for. Our guest that's going to come on, Joe, conservative felon, they call him Fish. He's going to talk about paying debts to society. When you commit a crime, no matter how heinous it is, no matter what you've done, you get a trial, you get sentenced by a jury of your peers, and you now pay your debt to society. Mr. Brooks, although he did something horrific, he stabbed his girlfriend multiple times. It was initially charged with attempted murder. He pled to or took a first-degree assault charge and was sentenced to 12 years. He wasn't sentenced to death. And that's my point. So, Joe, I want to bring you on real quick. Conservative felon. He's got a YouTube channel. He has done time himself in New York State. And that's why I have him here, because he has a great perspective on how correctional officers treat inmates and how the population of inmates get treated, whether you're white, black, Hispanic, Asian, gang members, non-gang members. Joe has spent 17 years in prison. So, Joe, thank you for taking the time out and hanging out with us today.
Thank you very much.
Welcome,
Can you hear? Thank you for having me. Hello, Ron. Can you hear me well?
Absolutely. We hear you perfect. So, Joe, go ahead. Take it over. Take over. I want to just tell our audience a little bit of just a brief overview of what what you've been through and the time that you spent and your perspective of this, Joe.
Sure. No, obviously, in New York State, I was sentenced in New York State. I was charged with murder. I unfortunately took the life of another man in a fight while I was under the influence of drugs. That was 1996. I was charged with murder in the second degree. I sat on Rikers Island for 3 years. I ended up pleading guilty to the charge of manslaughter in the first degree. I received the max sentence, which was 12 and a half to 25 years. And I was sent upstate to prison to experience the prison experience, Also say, my father was a lieutenant for 20 years. My grandfather was a police commissioner. And I was what they, called the black sheep, I guess. Unfortunately, I went in the wrong direction. And I ended up in the prison system, So
where was the places you spent time, just out of curiosity, just to give us an idea? Were you in some tougher places like Attica and some of the...
Sure, I'll give you a very quick rundown of it. As I said, it was 3 years in Rikers Island. Then I was transferred to Sing Sing. I would spend 2 years in Sing Sing, which, a crazy place, deplorable prison, should definitely be closed. I watched a lot of abuse in there. I was kicked out of Sing Sing and shipped to Attica prison. I would go to Attica for the next 6 years. As I was in Attica, I became medium eligible. My classification dropped. I would then go down to Mid-State, which was right across the street from Marcy Correctional Facility. Mid-State is in Marcy, New York. And we all knew about the reputation across the street, even all those years ago. And then I would go to a few other medium security prisons like Wallkill Correctional Facility, Mid-Orange Correctional Facility. And then I would be released from Queensboro inside of Queens after my 17 years was done.
So, Fish, tell us about your perspective and your thoughts, because you've done videos on the murder of Robert Brooks. If you can, tell the audience what your take is on this, because you have a great perspective, because you were behind the wall, you were locked down in the state correctional facility for quite a bit of time, and you know some of the trials and tribulations of being an inmate. But I'd like to get your take, the short version, if you could, and then we'll go from there.
What they refer to as beat up squads, right? I can say that there's a beat up squad in every single prison that I went to. It exists. As a former prisoner, one would think that I hold animosity towards the correctional officers or towards the criminal justice system itself. And I don't have animosity, because there's good and bad people in every profession. there's good prisoners and there's prisoners that act like animals, and the officers are the same way. You know, if I had to give you a percentage of what they were, I couldn't do that. But you mentioned that it was a minority, that there was a minority of officers that participate in things like beating up prisoners. And I don't know if I could honestly say that it's a minority. You know, if I had to give you a percentage, I would say that it's more like 50-50. You know, because it was a very scary situation. And it also depends on what facility you're in. Certain facilities have that reputation for having officers that rule by force. Right. So to give you a clear example, see, like what I said is, it's very important for us to find out why Robert Brooks was transferred from Mohawk Correctional Facility in the middle of the night to Marcy Correctional Facility. Right? Because they don't just ship people out in the middle of the night for no reason. So something may have transpired in Mohawk that got him shipped to Marcy, because these officers were angry at something. They didn't beat him for no reason. They had some type of reason for beating this man. And so that's, I believe, is important to find out. But to give you an example of how they think or how they work, I got into an argument in Sing Sing Correctional Facility with the warden, what they call superintendents. And pardon the language, I called him an asshole. And they packed me up and they sent me to Attica Prison. And when I got to Attica Prison, as soon as I arrived, they were waiting for me. And they were waiting for me to give me a beating. And they put a pair of handcuffs on me the second I walked in the door. They broke my nose. They punched me in the face. They threw me on the ground. And then they leaned over me and said, "Don't ever think that you can curse out the superintendent in Attica Correctional Facility. Do you understand?" And of course I said, "Yeah, I understand." They put me in a cell, let me sleep in a cell on a piece of metal all night with no mattress. You know, so that's the way they operated.
Wow.
You know, they operated by intimidation. They operated by fear. You know, there was and you know, I will say with this, I don't want to go too much. I want you to ask another question, of course. But to give you an example of there was a correctional officer with a black baby in a noose tattooed on his arm in Attica Correctional Facility. Okay.
Atlanta.
I mean, I could give you his name. I remember his name. He had a noose on his forearm with a black baby tattooed in the noose, right? So this is what you were dealing with. The African Americans definitely had it much rougher than a white prisoner. You know,
I gotta hit a button here. I gotta
hit the button.
Hold on.
Pardon my French, but you're an asshole.
That guy is an asshole, and that gets a
oh hell no.
That gets an oh hell no.
Yeah.
This perspective is exactly what I wanted to portray here, because again, I don't have that experience. I was in the transport unit, so I went up to some of the state correction facilities. Aunt and I worked together, so I would take guys out of there, and they basically would say to me, "I can't wait to get the fuck out of here. Get me to Rikers."
Rikers. They wanted to go to Rikers.
They wanted because they were just dying to get there, because they knew that they were going to, you know, plea out to their warrant or to get time served, go to court and go home. So it's just so crazy. It's just, it's insane. I want to play this clip from the corrections commissioner, because he got grilled, and I want to play this for our audience. We are going to be talking about the potential charges and how many of these correction officers we could be looking at on Tuesday. JB Nicholas is going to be joining us in a few minutes. So after this, we're going to have him come on. We're going to talk about the potential, and we're going to talk about the 9 that we believe are going to be hauled in to Oneida County Courthouse to face these charges.
On the reaction to the killing rather than what could have been done to prevent it altogether. Here's Tom's report.
John McMillan, Terry Coopers, Carl Taylor, black man after black man killed by corrections.
The commissioner was asked about the corrections officers involved in the beating of Robert Brooks, who were already named in federal lawsuits prior to that, yet still working at Marcy. He was also asked about what power he had to fire abusive officers.
We have a collective bargaining agreement process where staff are afforded a due process that was negotiated into the contract, and I am bound by the decision of an independent arbiter looking at the facts rather than me as a 27-year professional. So anything that allows me to continue to hold staff accountable and run a safe system are things that.
So that collective bargaining agreement you're referring to there is harboring these felons to commit these crimes. And some of them, as we know, that were in that room murdering Robert Brooks had pending charges against them for
Yes.
brutalizing other inmates. And that's what makes this so fucked up, is that this culture is able to be in existence. This is in the New York State Corrections Department, and it's been going on for a long, long time.
Mhm.
We should be looking.
Another question about preventing this regarding the report from 2022 detailing an abusive culture at Marcy. Commissioner Marticello saying he did see that report and that they responded.
They were able to launch 3 investigations associated at Marcy. One wound up being associated to Midstate. But a lot of the information was more anecdotal, where it couldn't identify an individual. But we did do that follow-up.
He added that after Robert Brooks was killed, they have the Office of Special Investigations now embedded in facilities, meeting with individuals without members of that facility in the room. Meanwhile, Republicans in their line of questioning concerned with staffing. Marticello saying they're down 2,200 correction officers.
When we have staffing crises, you look at the healthcare, they're giving recruitment bonuses, retention bonuses. The starting pay for a CO is 50.
I don't even want to hear this bullshit.
Yeah.
Staffing is not their
Yeah.
problem right now. What their problem is getting this goon squad, this beatdown squad, this culture of that it's okay to just fuck up any inmate. And we could go down a long list, and I apologize for the expletives, but this stuff gets my heart pumping. This gets I really am outraged by this. And I'm going to continue to speak about it. JB Nicholas, an independent reporter, he runs the freelance. I'm going to have him join us, and I'm praying that his audio and everything works good. JB, welcome. How are you, my brother?
Hey, how you doing?
Welcome, JB.
Hey, Amazing Ann. Hey, Conservative Felon. What's going on?
Hi.
How are you, sir?
So
Right, thanks for having me, DutyRon. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been watching your stuff now since this thing jumped off, and I got to say, great insight, and it's very fascinating to hear your perspective on this as a former law enforcement officer. And I really appreciate you having a forum for this discussion.
JB, you and I have been speaking quite a bit, and I told Amazing Ant, I told my partner Ed, who's going to be joining us in a short. I also told Fish about you, and all of us are in tune to all the people who are covering this. But I really got a lot of good information from gleaming the freelance, and I'm going to put it up on here. I encourage the audience that's watching. We're close to 1,000 people watching this live stream. This is a one-stop place. I'm going to link it in the description. He's covering, look, he's got the faces, the names,
Wow.
videos. JB was the first to put out an unedited video of this brutal beating. And I tried to play this because YouTube gave it the zonk of you have to be, it's age restricted.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to play it, and it wouldn't even let me play it here. And that's what's crazy about it. It's got 498 views. It should have 498,000 views, because he put down every detail of the beating, the murder of Robert Brooks. What went through your thought process when you uploaded that, JB? I want you to tell the audience about your experience and how you felt about when you saw Robert Brooks being murdered on body cam.
So as a journalist, I want to talk about the facts as opposed to my feelings. But when I saw the video, I realized that I bring an interesting perspective to this, because before I was a journalist, I served 13 years in prison myself. So I combined both worlds, knowledge, inside knowledge, outside knowledge. And I figured I had something to offer that the average journalist didn't. And so you would see little details in the video. And of course, the video is without sound. So that makes you focus on the visual aspect of it. And, just trying to put yourself in the shoes of the officers as this is going down to explain what is happening. For example, there's a part in the video where Sergeant Trombley directs a correction officer to leave the room. And that's very important because it tells you that Trombley is in command. The officer follows his order and leaves the room. So nothing like this has ever happened before. We all knew that, as Conservative Felon pointed out, or experienced ourselves, the beat up squads in state prisons. Proving that it exists to, the general population is another thing. And that's what's so special about this video, that it's really the first time that this kind of brutality by sworn law enforcement officers acting on behalf of the state has been captured in truly gruesome video. So what's happening, I said it was historic because it hasn't happened before, has been captured. The accountability part, that is about to happen on Tuesday is also a potentially historic event. We'll see what the charges are. We don't know what they are. Are they murder? Are they manslaughter? We don't know. How many people are charged? How many people are facing the top charge? Syracuse News reported that it's 9 people. But we don't really know for sure. We'll find out Tuesday when they unseal that indictment in court. I spoke with Robert Ricks the other day about how he was feeling about, news that the indictments had been handed out. And he said that, the delay, DutyRon, as you talked about earlier, it said it caused them pain. It really did. Watching these guys, knowing that they're taking their kids to school every day and they're enjoying, holidays, Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's Day, with their families, while his son is dead and there's no justice. But, he gave the special prosecutor Fitzpatrick a break. He said that he understood that it was a complex case and it needed to be brought airtight. And so we'll see on Tuesday if Fitzpatrick comes through, so to speak, with the job he's been tasked to.
He won't.
I want to say
Conservative Felon seems to want to weigh in. What is that?
He definitely wants to weigh in, but I just want to say this. For everybody here on the panel, and I've got my co-host, retired Ed Wallace. He is a retired NYPD first grade detective, crime scene investigator. He's got a lot to say about this because I would say almost a month ago, the preliminary autopsy report came out, and it said death at the hands of another. And in our world, in detectives' world, and people who like us that go out and arrest people for murder, when you see that from the New York State medical examiner's office or whatever county medical examiner's office handled Robert Brooks, Oneida County.
Oneida County.
Right? So when you hear death at the hands of another, that spells murder. It spells homicide. Ed, I'm going to let you join in. I see you're out in the car. I know he's busy doing something, but that's what's got me like, you talk about, what are they going to come up? There is no other possibility. When you have a grand jury that looks at that video and looks at the report, because it's all going to be packaged together. If Fitzpatrick did the right thing, if this Onondaga County, I know it wasn't him, but it was his assistant that handled it. I don't have the guy's name off the top of my head, but if they package this thing up the right way for justice for Robert Brooks, the autopsy report would be there, which says death at the hands of another by death by asphyxia. I believe that he probably in that report, and I didn't see it, had probably a broken hyoid bone. A death at the hands of another is murder. And there's no sugarcoating that. So if they come up with anything less than murder second degree, I am going to be enraged. I'm going to be infuriated, and I will go out and protest with people. I will drive up to Albany and protest that because this is ridiculous. Ed, how's it going, brother?
Great. Hey guys, thanks for being here. Yeah, Ron, I'm a little worried about this, Ron. I hear what you're saying, but I am very worried that we're not going to get what we think we're going to get, because of what I'm hearing is they broke these people down into 3 categories: the attackers, the people that assisted the attacker by holding our victim down, and those that stood by and did nothing. And they're also saying and reporting that several of these people gave testimony in the grand jury, others have not, and they were cooperating witnesses. So, and you know, what are we talking about here? 14, 15 people, and only 9 are being indicted?
Yeah, I mean, that's if the Syracuse has it right. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, you know, if that's correct, okay. You know, I know that there's a lot of chatter that they're, you know, struggling with the autopsy results. I don't know why, because if the medical examiner looks at the videotape, especially the portion where they take Mr. Brooks off the table and bring him to that back corner, okay, and the way they were holding him around his neck with his clothing, okay, the two corrections officers holding him against the wall with his clothing, with his head tilted downward, he was dead. He was lifeless, okay. At that point, between the physical examination done at the postmortem exam and that videotape, to me, that seals it murder. Okay, a homicide is a medical legal death investigation, which means a death at the hands of another. Okay, right. But murder is the penal law charge. Okay, and it's quite obvious to me that this was murder and not manslaughter.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm curious, Detective. What does it for you? What fact takes it out of manslaughter and makes it murder?
Intent. Mm-hmm. They could have stopped any time.
To cause serious physical injury, right, Ed?
Yes, that's correct.
This was a 10+ minute beating. This was not just a quick punch. There was guys tapping sergeants. Hey, watch out. I'm going to hit him a couple more times. Sarge, back up. This was something that was done on a regular basis. It's just no other inmate that we know of died from their beatings that we know of. And I say that with extreme conviction, because maybe there's others that they wrote in their reports, fell down the stairs, fell in the shower. Fish, I know you could probably talk about that.
It's very hard. It's very hard for a court to prove intent. Okay. Because to prove that they intended to kill him is very difficult. And so manslaughter means that you're responsible, but you didn't intend to kill him. And I'm leaning towards the belief that they're going to be charged with manslaughter. I think they should be charged with murder, right? Because I think that they would know that 10 people, 5 people, 6 people choking a man, kicking a man, beating a man, you had to know that the outcome was going to be death. But exactly. It's very hard to prove that in the court of law, you know.
But to a grand jury, I'm sorry, Ed, to a grand jury, it's not like this is not a trial. It's very easy to indict somebody. They talk about you can indict a ham sandwich.
Yeah.
So, you know, if they were to present to the grand jury murder in the second degree, you look at 10 minutes of a brutal beating. They stuffed Clorox wipes, according to Mr. Ricks. That's Robert Brooks' father. He said that those were Clorox wipes that were stuffed into his mouth while he was gasping for air and being beaten on both sides of the gurney there in the infirmary. And they were also, when he was lifeless after, Ed, you brought up a great point. When they brought him back after they took him, you saw his feet come off the ground up by his neck, and they brought him back there and were doing those chest rubs. They were still holding him down by his neck. They were still holding. There was 2 guys holding him down
while he was cuffed. While he was rear cuffed and shackled, right, Ed? And DutyRon, he was shackled too.
Yeah.
I don't think he was shackled. I'm not sure if he was shackled, but he was definitely rear cuffed. But here's the thing, okay? Any reasonable person knows that there's a possibility with this type of beating for a death to occur, as you said. Now we have what's called felony homicide. In the course of a felony being committed, which is the assault, somebody dies.
Yes.
Okay, that's felony homicide. Okay, so there, it's no intent is needed. Then there's reckless.
And gang assault.
Right, and there's gang assault. There are all of these areas that there should be a homicide charge. You can charge also manslaughter, but charge the homicide.
The top charge.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, charge the homicide and have the lower lesser included charge of manslaughter. Okay, and let the jury figure it out.
Yeah.
I have absolutely no faith in Fitzpatrick, because Fitzpatrick, the district attorney, his track record is absolutely horrible. You know, he has letting anyone in authority that has been that has had a criminal case against them in the past, he has let them off the hook, or he has refused to press charges. And we're talking about a very small upstate town now. This is not New York City. This is not the Bronx. This is a small upstate town where everybody knows everyone and everybody works together. And that district attorney is a man that probably would have never brought forth charges unless it was for the pressure of people on YouTube, people on the internet, people picketing. He would have never brought those charges if it wasn't for the pressure. That's the type of district attorney Fitzpatrick is.
But also conservative felon. The Attorney General Letitia James of New York passed off the case to him, saying it was a conflict of interest. I've never seen the law have a conflict of interest with Lady Justice blinded. Now the blindfold's off.
Well, real quick. The reason there was a conflict of interest is because the officers that killed Robert Brooks have open cases against them already, and Letitia James is defending them in those open cases. And in one case, one of those officers put a prisoner in a wheelchair. In another case, he disfigured a prisoner. So that was why she recused herself from the case and turned it over. At least that's what she told us.
But guess what? That case was settled December 5th. 4 days before Mr. Brooks was murdered by that officer. That case was settled December 5th. So technically it was already settled. So politics.
But here's my problem. Letitia James is the Attorney General, the highest authority in the New York State, right? Not the United States, New York State Attorney General. Do you think that she would have had enough wherewithal to say to herself, let me look into this before I, on December 27th, put out a press conference and show 4 body cam footage pieces to the American people and get everybody in a rile up. And let me do my due diligence before I rush to get this out there. And she didn't do that. And somebody had to tap her on the shoulder afterwards and say, hey, ma'am, excuse me, but I think we have a conflict here. This is what's got my head spinning, is because you are now putting out a major piece of information that is something that nobody's ever seen before. A murder by New York State Department of Corrections correctional officers of an inmate on body cam footage, and you don't do your due diligence before you hold a press conference. And that press conference was hosted by the New York State Attorney General's office by Zoom.
Well, how about this? How many times do cases come up against these officers that Letitia James has to represent them in lawsuits before you realize there's something wrong with these officers? And maybe they shouldn't be indemnified by the state anymore.
Exactly.
Meaning we're not going to represent them in these cases.
Yeah.
Because their liability, their risk, they're high risk.
But it's the collective bargaining. We heard the commissioner talk about that.
That's not a defense, Ronnie, for murder. You know that.
It's
and
crazy.
they had too many cops in the room, or officers in the room that day. Remember they said at collective bargaining, we don't have enough officers. That's not a reason to kill someone.
Yeah, agreed. I know, JB, you've been to a lot of the hearings. You followed one of these correction officers out of court when he was given testimony with his attorney. They put up that manila folder in front of his face. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, and what was that like for you? You were out there, I guess, in the court, or did you have?
So that was Matthew Gallagher. That was the driver, the van driver that night. He was one of the officers who put his hands on Brooks during the beatdown in the prison infirmary. And officers from the New York State Department of Corrections have been using infirmaries to abuse sadistically prisoners going back, for at least 10 years. When I was a freelance reporter in New York City, I reported for Gothamist on the killing of Samuel Horrell at Fishkill in 2015, and he was beaten in the infirmary at Fishkill. So inmates being abused by guards in infirmaries in the New York State prison system is well known to Letitia James and others. Now, after James released the video and no one arrested these officers, like most people would be arrested if they committed a murder on video, they'd be immediately arrested. There's no question. We could wait. We'll wait for the ME, but we got it on video. We see it right there. There's no reason to wait. Why'd the guy die? Just look at the video and you see it for yourself. So there really wasn't a reason to wait for the ME's report.
Absolutely. They could have been charged with assault, and then they could have went back into the grand jury after the ME's report came back, and then been charged with homicide and manslaughter.
Yep.
Which 100%. Happens often in cases.
Ed's in the car and he froze, Ed, so we couldn't hear you. You're gonna have to repeat that.
Okay, what I said was, with that video, they had plenty to indict them and charge them with assault. Okay. And then once the autopsy results came back definitive, then go back into the grand jury and amend the indictment and add homicide and manslaughter.
Yeah.
And Ed, they let them retire. So we were talking about this before you came on. You might have seen that it's all wrong because they even let them retire before investigating or in grand jury or indictment. So 100%, Ed, there was enough for an assault arrest. I
want to talk a little bit about Robert Brooks. 9/21, he was brought to Marcy Correctional. By 9:41, 9:50, he was dead in that infirmary, in my opinion. They didn't pronounce him until 4 a.m. at Wynn General Hospital. But as reported here on the freelance, no one at the Marcy Correctional Facility called 911 for Robert Brooks the night he was killed by a beat-up squad by prison guards. Instead of not dialing 911, the prison dialed a number of a private ambulance. JB, do you want to talk about this? How did you get this story?
Right. So this is really one of the great unknowns about the case, right? There's a number of unknowns about this case. One of the great unknowns is why did this start? So we have, as I explained in the video, where I broke down the body camera video and showed what each officer did, Christopher Walrath comes in at the beginning of the beatdown and talks directly at Brooks and says something to him. And he was kind of like ushered in there to say whatever he was going to say, and then he left. So that leads me to believe that Walrath was there when whatever happened started it, right? So, but we don't know what that thing was yet. So that's one of the great unknowns. The other great unknown of the case is what happened after the video went off, right? They attached the wires from the portable defibrillator, as I explained in the video, breaking it down. And then the video goes blank. And we don't know what happens between, about 10 o'clock and 4 a.m.
Yeah.
What is going on? The Department of Corrections at one of the hearings that you referred to, the court hearing in Gallagher's case. And let me just say that when no one got charged, what the Attorney General Letitia James did is try to take 4 of these guys' guns away, pursuant to a new law that New York has called the Red Flag Gun Law, which was originally enacted for school shooters. So she got 2 of the guys' guns taken away, and then a judge ruled that one of the judges in one of the 4 cases ruled that this process was improper, that the authorities needed to bring charges first before they try to take a guy's guns. But in any event, during one of the guys whose guns they tried to take was Gallagher. And he was like I said, he was the driver. He came in at the end or about in the middle, and he briefly pushed Brooks back down on the table while these guys were beating him. And it's unclear what he did with his hand, but he definitely put hands on Brooks. And during the hearing, I believe this is his video that you're showing from. During the hearing, he pled the fifth 5 times, or 6 times. So that was one of the few moments of justice that occurred in this case.
Yeah.
So far,
we could see Anthony Farina trying to stuff the alleged Clorox wipe into Robert Brooks's mouth. And Robert Brooks, I believe, bites him here in his own self-defense. He's got his hands, as you could see right here, behind his back, and he's being choked.
And that's Kingsley with his hands around his neck.
And this is Sergeant Trombley, right?
Wow.
No, that's Kingsley. That's Mashaw. That's Sergeant Mashaw.
Mashaw.
And then Kingsley, David Kingsley II, is the guy who has his hands around his neck. And Farina is the one attempting to stuff a rag of some sort in his mouth. And then that's Anzalone with the backwood ball cap right there.
But you could see right here where he's trying to stuff this rag down his throat. This is Farina.
Farina.
You could see
Kingsley.
Right.
Anzalone.
Right. Anzalone here, Kingsley, Farina. But you could see right here where he bites him and he punches him in the face.
Oh yeah, good eye.
Hey, Ron, a couple things. One, that might not be a defensive bite. Okay, because when you're stuffing something down somebody's mouth, there's a gag reflux, and you bite. Okay, you can ask any dentist in the world about this. It's not done intentionally. It's just because of that gag reflux. Two, I want to go back to something Amazing Ant said, or about allowed them to retire. In the New York City Police Department, if you are under investigation by internal affairs or some outside entity, you are not allowed to retire while under investigation. So these guys were allowed to retire and get their pensions before the investigation was completed.
I will say this, Ed Wallace, because I keep bringing it up, and I think this will be my platform, with all due respect, everyone. Under Letitia James, there's been more corruption cases within the NYPD, which we'll talk about at a future day when we bring a guest on who's focusing on this. And they have allowed 4 high-profile, as you know, including 2 big chiefs, retire with a pension while under federal investigation. And they were able to retire with their firearms and their pensions. And then an indictment's coming down on one of them soon. So this is under Letitia James, which goes back to conservative felon and J.P. Nicholas, what we were talking about with Fitzpatrick taking over the case. Letitia James could have been a little bit more proactive with the layers. If she was removing 2 firearms and there was some question because there were no charges, maybe she had them psychologically tested. The NYPD does that. They take your firearms if you're psychologically impaired. But none of this came out in the open, and she should have come out in the open, not on Zoom. The way she did on TV yesterday nationally with current events in New York, she should have done this with this case. Why aren't they doing it with this case? And to your point, Ed, with the retirements, it's under Letitia James. And the bigger question is for down the road, why under her are these things happening?
Well, also you got to remember that the chiefs are political appointments. Right. Okay. You, me, Ron, we're not allowed to retire under investigation.
Exactly.
No.
Bring it back to the Brooks case. The private arbitrators who the commissioner says he has no control over, those appear in 1972 in the contract for the first time, insofar as I can tell, between the Corrections Officers Union and New York State, 1972. And basically what the state did was they privatized the employee disciplinary process for prison guards with arbitrators. So how does this work out in practice? We have no clue. Do they meet in the headquarters of the Department of Corrections in a hearing room? Is it recorded? Or do they meet in a back room at a Holiday Inn in Utica? Where do they do these things? Now, the more informal and loose these processes are, I think you all agree, the more susceptible to corruption they are.
100%.
There's no checks and balances.
We don't know.
Conservative felon, you had something to say, and I don't want you to lose your thought. I want to hear.
No, that's fine. I was going to say that as far as the guys retiring to get their pensions, Fitzpatrick did that himself. Fitzpatrick retired from the district attorney position, collected his pension, and 24 hours later became the district attorney again. Okay. So that's a case that you could just Google, and what they call double dipping, right? But he was legally allowed to double dip. So in no way, shape, or form is this man going to stop a correctional officer from trying to do something that he did himself. He retired for 24 hours and then collected his pension and became the DA on Monday morning. Right. So now he gets his salary and he gets his pension at the same time. Right. So legally he's allowed to do that. But of course, it's not ethical. I think the major issue here is that the Department of Corrections does not focus on any type of rehabilitation anymore. It's incarceration, right? And so when you have a bunch of correctional officers who are just thinking, we are here to lock up these animals and deal with these animals, right? There's no mind frame of let's try and help, let's try and prepare them for society, let's do this. To give you a very small example of the childlike mentality they possess, there's a grievance system in prison. If you don't get something that you're entitled to, you're allowed to file a grievance. Let's say you go to the package room to pick up a pack of cookies, and the officer tells you, you can't have those cookies, you're not allowed to have them. And you say, why am I not allowed to have them? They say, because there's no raisins allowed in the facility. And this says they have raisins. So you decide to go file a grievance. If you file a grievance against that officer, you're getting the shit kicked out of you that night. They are coming to your cell and they are kicking the living shit out of you because you filed a grievance over a pack of cookies, right? So you're skating on such thin ice as a prisoner that the people that are, I always said this, you locked me up, I committed a crime. You locked me up for breaking the rules of society. But now that I'm in the prison system, you're showing me that you don't follow the rules either. And all you're going to do is create animosity in me now, right? Because you're going to show me that the system is full of shit, right? And that's one thing that I learned over 17 years of incarceration is that the system is full of shit. Right? They break the rules and break the laws on a daily basis. And if you're black and you're in the system, you really got it coming rough. I had it a little easier because I was white. These are upstate country boys. That's what they are. No matter how bad that sounds, if the prison wasn't there, they'd be working on a farm because that's what's up there. There's farms up there. And then the prison gets built, and all of a sudden 600 farmers have a job and you put them in charge over a minority. You give them a badge, you give them a gun, you give them power and say, now look, now take care of these black people right here. There's no black people even in their community. Yeah. There's such a, right? So it's a very dangerous situation that's created, and as bad as that sounds, that's a fact. They're upstate country farmers that you gave power to, and now you're going to have explosive situations like that, right?
I'll just say this, Fish, thank you for giving us that perspective because, again, myself, Ed Wallace, and Amazing Ant, we have no exposure to this because we were never incarcerated. We were never up there. So I wholeheartedly think that it is important and it is so important for our audience and people who are watching this case and watching what's unfolding right now to hear that, because none of us could give that opinion. None of us can give that opinion because we've never seen it or never been involved in it. And JB, I know you have something to say because you did time as well yourself, and I know that you were wanting to say something and interject here, so I'm going to give you the floor.
Well, I was just wondering if you had any questions from any listeners or viewers we could answer for them. But
yeah, we're gonna before
you tee one up, I just want to say, as a journalist, since this case broke, I've been to all of these guys' houses, and what struck me is actually the diversity of where they live. I was aware of, the stereotype, as conservative felon said, that all these guys, were like walking around with pitchforks and farmers and whatnot. But going to these guys' addresses, what you find is half of them lives in suburbs of Utica, and the other half would live out there in the country. So yes, there is some of them who would probably have been farmers if not for the job, but I would say 3/4 of them, I don't know. Farina, for example, lives in a cookie cutter subdivision, with his blonde wife and blonde daughter and perfect little thug kid that we saw on, the auditor who went up there, Long Island audit,
right?
Which was fascinating because it was really an act of video vigilantism to fill the vacuum that Fitzpatrick created by failing to arrest anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kessler lives with his mom still, so some of these guys, Anzalone lives out there in the country. He rides his little snowmobile around in the wintertime with his kids. Kessler, also a country boy. Those guys live close by each other, actually, not too far. Who else lives? Walrath lives near them. They're in a country place.
JB, when you get up into the facilities like Attica and like Clinton and like the Max facilities that are upstate, those maybe you refer to that. Those are country boys, man. Those are all country boys. The further you go upstate, the tougher they get.
It's true. It's true. It's true because
guys,
Marcy is kind of like on the outskirts of Utica, so it's almost like in a suburb. So that's, I think that's part of what you're saying,
But I want to tell you, gentlemen, that this too is because since I've been covering this since December 27th, when Letitia James came out with these videos, that's when I started covering this because that's when I became aware of it. I've received so many emails from former correction lieutenants, sergeants, COs, New York State, multiple messages and emails from them trying to, on different levels, justify what happened to Robert Brooks. And I wholeheartedly and hands down have just sent them back messages. You have proven to me what kind of monsters you guys are. And basically, I'm not going to go into the expletives that I shared back with these people, but they showed me their true colors. These guys who, I'm not saying all of them, and I'm not painting I'm not spraying a brush here and just saying all of them are like this. But the ones that emailed me and were outraged that I was talking to, and they referred it. I had Ricardo Moore, who was a former inmate. They called him a convict. They said, you have a former convict. You have the nerve to put a former convict on your show. And I said, you know what? Go fuck yourself, because guess what? I need the perspective of a former inmate. I need to know what it's like behind those walls so I can find out for myself and talk about it with some confidence about what's going on. And that's why, Fish, for you coming on here, I applaud you. I thank you. And JB, your perspective and all of the things that you do to bring out the facts of these cases. If it wasn't for you guys, nobody would know about this, because the news media, they're like this. They want to paint a nice, pretty picture, package it up really cute, and put it out there and be very politically correct about it. Here, we're not doing that. Here, we're laying it all out on the line, because what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. Murder is murder, and they killed Robert Brooks, and we need to talk about that. There is no sugarcoating and any of that activity, and anybody that wants to sugarcoat that is just as bad as those people who did that. Go ahead, Fish.
Ron, I just did a roofing job with an Attica correctional officer who used to supervise me. right? So there's no animosity for the correctional officer. I'm not here to beat them up. I had an officer up there who was very good to me. He was a normal guy. He clocked in. He did his job. He made sure we followed the rules and the regulations. And he saw that I was the type of prisoner that just did my time like a man. And when I got back into society, I hooked up with him. I sit at his dinner table with his 2 daughters and have dinner. I just did a roofing job with him for 2 weeks. So if a correctional officer is going to live the right way and do the right thing, then there's no problem. I'm not here to beat up the officers. As you said, it's this incident. That's all I'm talking about is this incident. Not what happened in another facility, not what happened anywhere else. The Robert Brooks incident. In this incident, they're no good, they're guilty, and they need to be punished. And that's what this story, that's what this whole story is about right here. These individuals, not all of them.
100%. 100%. I want to go to the audience. You guys have been great, and a lot of people have sent super chats. I want to thank them for that. I'm going to highlight them now. New Jersey Kathy sends in $10 and says, we go after other countries to go after other countries for treating prisoners like this. We need to get our own house in order before we say anything. Amen. Amen to that, New Jersey Kathy. 100%. Uncompromised one, thank you for becoming a new member. Kel sends in a membership comment. She's a member for over 23 months. She says, hello from snowy New York. Yeah, it's snowing here, that's for sure. DSN gifted memberships. Thank you for doing that. Evie 323, mom of the history chick, gifted 5 memberships. Thank you. Stacy, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships. And Insomniac 49, she says, what's the chance of any of these guys spending one day in prison? I hope there's a goddamn good chance because we have it on video of them murdering Robert Brooks. And this is something that we've never seen before in the state of New York and anywhere for that matter as it pertains to Department of Corrections. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think I've ever seen once in any state in the United States a correction officer on video murdering an inmate. If it's out there, I'd like to see it. So Just Mad World said, just started watching at last. Love you. Oh, well, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that, Mad World. Hashtag Ed, hashtag DutyRon, hashtag fish. If you don't mind, Joe, we'll do hashtag fish and hashtag JB. If you got any questions, put them in the chat. I'd like to cherry pick.
Can I say something while we're waiting for the chat questions real quickly? Back to Ed Wallace and JB earlier. JB, thanks for posting that article on the ambulance. I'm going to look at that. I'm a New York State EMT for a very long time, close to 29 years. Let's say close to 30. And one thing they taught us the very first week when you go for the course is that inaction is manslaughter in terms of medical care or neglect. You can't leave a patient in the hallway on the gurney to even walk away. Your partner walks away, you stay with the patient. If you don't call for paramedics or for the doctor for further advanced care, you can be held liable for manslaughter or murder, depending on how they died. So that in itself as an EMT holds a very high standard. So looking at what happened in that correctional facility medical room, Ed, when you said we don't know what happened, I think it was you, Ed, after 2,200 hours, 10 p.m. at night till 4 in the morning, that defibrillator will tell us. It's the black box. You all know that, like an airplane. That's the black box that's going to tell us if they even used it. In my estimation, I don't think they did. That's just my gut hunch, which you can't use in New York State. But I don't think they did. But when these indictments come down, I bet you something's going to come up medically related that's going to show they didn't use it. They didn't use it properly. They didn't put it on. And Ed, I am there with you. I think he was deceased way before he went on this private ambulance, and them not calling should be an additional charge.
Yeah. Agreed.
It seems to me that calling a private ambulance would violate some kind of protocol.
Yes, it is in New York State EMT training. We have to go through telemetry, which is calling the doctor, like our supervisor, on the phone, on the radio. Sometimes years ago, it was, radio. Now they use phones. But Ed, you're 100% correct. In New York State, Part 800 protocol, you have to go through the public system of the radio, the scanner, even a job phone to call to get a public response. If they're all busy, we call it diversion. Then they send a private ambulance with public employees there together. They're never alone, and it's always authorized by a higher power authority.
And the reason I'm playing this, guys, is because on Tuesday, if each and every one of the individuals inside this room, as we see, and this is obviously, this is courtesy of the freelance, and thank you, JB, for posting this on your website. I'm going to link his website in the description. I encourage all 1,300 people that are watching here to go over and watch and subscribe and support JB and support Conservative Felon, because they're covering this case from every angle. But I'm playing this because it is important that we on Tuesday see each one of these individuals and everyone who was taking part in the brutal assault and murder of Robert Brooks to be charged. And I'm just going to keep it playing in the background.
So that's who in the back, that's Sergeant Trombley in the far back with the piece of paper right there in the corner. Yeah, you got your blue finger on it now.
Right.
And then we saw Farina with the bald head, right? In this, so that's Walrath right there. Christopher Walrath with the blue finger. Yeah. That's Christopher Walrath. So, and then, Madamick, he's one of the nurses.
Laughing.
Wow.
Yeah, Dashnall. But those guys got told to stay out of the room, it appears. So, but these guys right here, Anzalone.
But what, JP, even if they were told by their medical license, that was not a lawful order. I know you know. I just have to.
This is where they take them over to the.
Yeah. So that's really right there is what's going on over there.
He's dead right here. In my opinion.
Well, go back and play it again. When they grab his collar, when they grab his shirt and twist it onto his neck, he's unresponsive. Now this is out of order. I mean, because his pants were off here.
Wow.
They lift them off the table.
Right here. Watch this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at the way his head falls back.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
dead.
This is he's unconscious. This is one of the most horrible things you could ever witness in your life. You know, and these guys nonchalantly do it. There's Anzalone.
Yeah.
So with the glasses, with the head turned back, there he goes by. Anzalone.
This is just on a loop now, so it's just repeating.
Gallagher. So this is one of the guys that should be charged.
Yeah.
Kingsley in the back right. That's Kingsley in the back right with the sunglasses on the front of his hat.
And he looks DOA. Even his pallor is going. His coloring.
Yeah, that's Kingsley right there. Kingsley and Anzalone. So those guys are like in the top tier, you know, in the top tier of charges.
Yeah.
Those guys, whoever put their hands on them. So that's Kessler, Anzalone, Kingsley, Gallagher, and Farina.
So again, the tiers were the guys that went hands on. Tier 2, that's tier 1. Tier 1, hands on. Tier 2, they held him down at some point. Tier 3, they watched, didn't participate, but didn't stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So Gallagher would probably be in that middle tier because he just like pushed them down once and helped put handcuffs. He helped put the ankle restraints on him. And then the sergeant should be, I think if anyone is charged with murder, I think the sergeants have to be charged with murder too, right?
Absolutely. And here's the thing. Your video has 498 views. And here's one of the primary reasons why it does is I can't even play it here. Wow. YouTube doesn't even allow me to play it. When I try to play it, I get this message and then it clicks right off.
Oh.
Wow.
So if somebody tries to watch this, I'm signed in. JB, I'm signed into my YouTube account. I have YouTube Premium. And
that's insane.
I can't even play. I want to play your 14-minute video. It's not allowing me to play it. Look, I'll refresh it again.
Wow.
That's just, I mean.
This is how they suppress the truth. You broke it down so perfectly. I wanted to play it piece by piece here before we ended.
Yeah.
And I can't even play it.
Wow.
That's incredible, DutyRon. I mean, thank you for pointing that out and bringing that censorship by Google to light, because I would have never known about this had you not brought that to our attention.
I have 462,000 or 463,000 subscribers. And when I play this and when I talk about this subject, I get 20,000, 30,000 views. I should have 150,000 views on it. But this is what YouTube does. They censor the content because they don't want their massive audience, their gazillions of people to see the truth. And this video is a perfect depiction of a breakdown of exactly what happened, and I'm not allowed to play it. So that's what we have. I want to go to the comments. I know, Ed, you probably have to go. You're somewhere in a car. I don't know what you're doing, but Secret Squirrel.
I'm sitting in my my driveway.
Oh, okay.
I just got back home, when I told you send me the link.
Right.
That video makes me angry, man. That video makes me angry.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. No reasonable person can look at that video and not feel anger.
I'll tell you what, if that video can bring us together, if that can bridge the gap between all of us with all our differences, that's a good result of a horrific thing.
I recall just getting the ignorant comments when I posted a little video about Robert Brooks. People would say, as DutyRon said in the beginning, "Oh, he stabbed his girlfriend. Who cares? Oh, he's a criminal. Who cares?" You know what I mean? Or maybe he was kicking them. Maybe he was biting them. There's no excuse when the man is handcuffed, man. If the man is not handcuffed, then I could say, okay, maybe he tried to attack him.
Right.
Maybe he was a threat. But when the man is handcuffed, it makes all the difference in the world. He is not a threat at that point. Not to 5, 6, 7 men. He's not a threat. There is absolute zero justification. You can't justify it.
You can't justify it, and they know it. And there's protocols for that. If they spit on you, if they try to bite you, you bag them.
That's right.
You bag them. There's protocols for that, okay? And they didn't follow any of the protocols. They knew they were breaking the law. They knew that they weren't trained to do any of the things that they're doing here. We were always trained. Once in cuffs, that's it.
Fight's over.
It's my belief, it's my opinion that something happened at Mohawk Correctional Facility. I think that the investigation needs to start at Mohawk Correctional Facility. They need to find out why he was being shipped out in the middle of the night. What word traveled? Did they take him and give him to Marcy Correctional Facility and say, here, this guy is a piece of shit, take care of him? Why did he leave Mohawk in the middle of the night? That's the question that needs to be answered.
So you're sort of drawing on your experience about getting transferred out of Sing Sing and landing in Attica, and then having the guards in Attica beat you up. So you think that maybe something similar happened to Brooks?
If they were transferring, he would have to do something to the officers during the transfer that was worthy of being beat to death. What was he going to do being transferred in a van going, what did he say? He threatened them so bad that they decided to beat him to death. It had to stem from Mohawk Correctional Facility.
Let me throw this at you. Let me throw this at you, conservative felon, because you know also that sometimes guys have enemies in certain facilities, and they know that if they go into that facility, they're as good as dead. So I think that's also something, maybe we're speculating here 100%. This is all just speculation, but it's informed speculation based on conservative felons and I don't know, maybe 30 years in prison, that these are the kind of things that happen, and these are the kind of problems that pop up. So that is a possibility.
They only I'll end with this. They only ship you out of a facility at 9:30 at night for 2 reasons. One, you have a problem with the administration and the officers, and they want to get you out of there. Or 2, you have a problem with other prisoners. right? And if he had a problem with other prisoners, they would have put him in involuntary protective custody or protective custody. They wouldn't ship him out as an emergency in the middle of the night. That leads me to believe that he had some type of problem with officers or administration to be transferred in the middle of the night. Nobody gets transferred in the middle of the night. That I did 20 years almost in prison and never saw a prisoner transferred in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
I got you.
Well, when Long Island Audit confronted the father and the son, I found it very telling that when Long Island Audit confronted the son and said, "Your father killed this man and beat him to death," the son's response was,
Mohawk.
That occurred in Mohawk.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Something happened in Mohawk Correctional Facility.
Yep, we knew it.
Look at this report that was by Syracuse. I think it was, I'm not sure who uploaded this, but it says the report warns of abuse before Marcy inmate killed. I just want the audience to hear this because we've heard it already, but I want to play this just because this shows that not only docs and the governor's office and everybody in New York State that runs the correctional facilities knew about problems at Marcy prior to Robert Brooks being murdered.
A national spotlight is now on Marcy Correctional Facility after the beating of Robert Brooks. The I-Team is revealing multiple warning signs of brutality inside the prison facility and information that state corrections officials were likely aware something was wrong. The I-Team's Connor White reports now.
Body-worn camera footage provides an unflinching look at brutality inside Marcy Correctional, as multiple corrections officers savagely beat Robert Brooks the day before he died. The kind of brutality that inmates have been flagging for years.
These are the very kinds of allegations that we hear routinely, and they simply do not typically get caught on camera.
Jennifer Scaife is the executive director of the Correctional Association of New York, a nonprofit watchdog of the state prison system, which came to Marcy in a routine visit in 2022. In a 62-page report, the organization found that about 80% of inmates said they were either witnesses to or victims of verbal, physical, or sexual abuse.
80%.
Yep.
80%. Fish, JB, is that, do you believe that that's an accurate report?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do.
I have no reason to question it.
I don't either. And I did some research on CANY, Correctional Association of New York, and they've been doing this for some time. So it gets worse. Let's listen.
67% say they were victims of racial abuse. One inmate told them that corrections officers would, quote, brag and intimidate us about the number of people they've beat or sprayed.
I think certainly officials have been aware of allegations for quite some time.
The report calls for the Attorney General's office and the Inspector General to investigate claims of abuse. It's unclear if anyone looked at the prison before Brooks died. Claims of beating, similar to what Brooks suffered, are documented in 2 lawsuits from 2022. Lawsuits which named 3 of the same people in this room. This week, Governor Kathy Hochul announced.
That's what makes this so fucked up, and is that they had knowledge of this. They did nothing with it. And this is 2022. It happened in 2024 at the end of the freaking year. The blood of Robert Brooks is on all of these people's hands, including Governor Hochul, including AG James, including all correction commissioners and everybody. This, in my opinion, the swamp has to be drained. And I hate to use that terminology, but the swamp needs to be drained because it is filthy. These people have allowed this to go on for so long. And if this didn't come out on a body-worn camera that was not, these idiots didn't even know it was recording. And I could really say these are fucking idiots that they didn't know it was recording. Thank God they didn't know, because if they did, they wouldn't have done what they did. But at the end of the day, we captured the true
nature.
Nature of what they're capable of doing. And
as we said, they were so comfortable doing what they were doing, it was obvious they'd done this before.
Yes.
Nobody flinched.
what you have to realize is that this time they killed the man. But what I witnessed through the years of incarceration is that the abuse takes place every single day. The murder may not happen every single day, but the abuse takes place every day, whether it's verbal, whether it's physical. People ask me, what is the answer then? What's the answer? And I think part of the answer is that a person who's going to become a correctional officer needs more than a high school diploma to become a correctional officer. They need to make correctional officers start earning a degree, but even if it's a 2-year degree in therapeutic behavior, in interpersonal skills, in social work. You need to give them some type of training before not just a high school diploma and a badge and a gun and put them in charge. Right? They need to make it mandatory that they all have body cameras. If we could send 25 million to Honduras for condoms, then we could give them all. Then we could give them all body cameras. Right? We're the richest state in the United States of America. There's no reason they shouldn't have. So they need to be better educated. They need to have body cameras, and more than that, the union should not be able to defend them if they have an assault charge. If an officer assaults someone, the union should step back and let them handle that situation, right? So definitely, I think that they need more education, man. You can't just give someone a high school diploma and put them in that situation.
Conservative felon. I'm sorry.
They're in a crisis. They're in a crisis right now. There's no question. The Department of Corrections in New York State is in a crisis. And it's not just Robert Brooks. It's the fact that they're at only 70% staffing power. So guys are working doubles and triples, and that makes people really angry, and that makes people quit. And then you got the morale from this thing, the fallout from this thing. Everybody looking at COs like, hey, you a baby killer too? You know, guys don't want to join. Guys don't want to be associated with that. You know, there's guys in other facilities, COs in other facilities, alleging that they're exposed to fentanyl, freaking out. You know, some of them are, some of them aren't. You know, they're going out on workers' comp for 6 months because their contract that allows them to do it. And so other people are working more doubles and triples. And now you got this guy, you know, DutyRon, you played the clip of him, you know, testifying in front of the Senate. He got confirmed in 2 days. You know, Governor Hochul put him up on a Monday, and Senator Salazar's committee confirmed them on a Wednesday. So, you know, what's going to give here? You know, what's going to give? The disciplinary system, which, you know, one of the things the freelance is doing is we're suing the Department of Corrections to open up the disciplinary hearings to the public so that we can see what actually goes on, you know, and if they are passing envelopes with cash under the table, right, we'll see it, so to speak. I mean, that's a metaphor. I'm speaking metaphorically. I have no evidence of that, right? But so we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And one of the ways we can make sure that, and when I say we, I'm talking about the general public. One of the ways the general public can make sure that doesn't happen is to open the hearings to the public. So I'm suing it in state Supreme Court to open those hearings to the public.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
They need laws though to change all this.
Right. There's not going to be one thing that we can put our finger on that will do the fix. It's going to be multiple changes that need to occur. And not the least of which is the background investigations conducted on the applicants for this position, including a better psychological exam and follow-up psychological, exams during a person's career.
Yes.
Okay. It's not just one and done when you initially get hired. Over the course of your career, you should be being looked at psychologically over the course of the career. Law enforcement, all law enforcement, I believe this should be for all law enforcement and not just correctional people. It's us as well. And then because, you know, we may be dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder that hasn't been diagnosed. We may be dealing with all kinds of other issues that can reflect in this kind of bad behavior.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned in the chat, and I commented, early intervention. So Dr. Harvey Schlossberg was was an NYPD first grade detective and a psychologist with a gun. Very well-known book. It's called Psychologist with a Gun. He passed away during COVID. His wife and him took down Son of Sam. They created the Freudian profile. The reason why I bring this up, Harvey Schlossberg, for everyone watching, can Google this. He created the Psych Services Division for the NYPD, but he created the psych exam for the FBI and the NYPD. In his reports and the work he did, he suggested early intervention for NYPD police officers and the federal government throughout their career. He got pushback. He ended up leaving to Port Authority in his 19th year, Ed, from the NYPD, which speaks volumes because he said, as a psychologist, cops need early intervention. So instead, they made it like an employee assistance program, which is important for personal issues. I'm not taking that away. But they never did the early intervention program like Ed just mentioned. And that's crucial, starting with this case. And also a conservative felon. I wanted to tell you, I worked in training for a bit for the NYPD. I love the body camera that you mentioned for COs. And just to hold me accountable and for everyone out there, next time I come on for Brooks, I'm in contact with a chief at the Attorney General's office. He did NYPD training and he's involved with the unit that investigates these cases. Unfortunately, she didn't investigate this, but I'm going to speak to him about the body cameras and see what they're doing for training for COs. And I promise everyone, DutyRon, I will follow up on that.
Awesome. Awesome.
All right, guys, I got to run.
All right, Ed, thanks for being here. I appreciate
Take
you.
care, Ed.
Gentlemen, thank you for coming up on our show and educating our audience, because we're all about education. You know, we've had the other side of this coin on the show as well. We've had correctional officers with years and years of experience come on and talk about, and now we had you all as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed.
Ed,
Thanks
before
for
you
having us.
go, Ed, you'll appreciate this. I was going to close out with this, but I'll do it now since you're leaving and I don't want to leave you out. For Valentine's Day, we're all talking about the month of love, right? And this group coming together, I think it's because we love truth and justice and we're fighting for Mr. Brooks. But I wanted to tell everyone that God says he loved us so much that he gave his son. And I know we don't speak religion, but I'm going to say personally, God loves us all. And we just have to tap into that and talk directly to him and share that love with one another. And I think we're doing that here.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. All right, Ed.
Good night, folks.
There you
Take
go.
care.
I want to play this thing with Farina and his son. I have to play this because this is, again, we're going to see charges. This is me and you, Aunt. So
yeah,
this is my uploaded video. And you know what? Somebody said, JB, that they were able to see your video. But this is me. I'm signed into my own YouTube premium channel, and it's not allowing me to play it.
It's
so
not allowing you to live cast it for some reason.
Someone said in the chat you have to hit OK, DutyRon.
I did. I selected OK. I selected OK. So, anyways, let's play this. Former correctional officer Anthony Farina, the disgusting monster who was kicking and assaulting Robert Brooks, kick him in the groin, kick him in the stomach. He was on the left side of the infirmary, was standing there just watching, assaulting Robert Brooks viciously during the whole time. Sean Reyes went to this guy's block and just sat on the block with his car. He wasn't sure where his house was. Anthony Farina himself and his adult son comes out and confronts Sean and asks him, "Can I help you?" And I want you to listen closely because Sean does not at any time disrespect any of them, but at one point the son says and turns around, and I'll play it slowly. He says, Sean says to him, "Your father is on video murdering Robert Brooks. Have anything to say about that?" And the kid turns around. He's an adult. I call him a kid.
Yeah, he's a son.
Turned around and he goes, "He didn't. No, he didn't. He didn't kill him. It happened at Mohawk Correctional." This is what he says. He got beat up at Mohawk, he tells this guy.
Wow.
Farina was part of the, quote, beat down squad. Since I was in the area, I decided to investigate myself and expose this uncharged, dangerous murderer.
This is Anthony Farina here, and this is his son up at the window of this guy's car. They came out of their house. He did not go to them, and they walked two doors down to him in his car in the street.
That mainstream media should be doing. But
all right, so this is Farina.
Yes.
Son.
He lost weight.
Yeah. Farina here, right up at his window.
Wow.
And his adult son. He's got to be in his early 20s. And I slowed this down so you could hear what these two say, and it's despicable.
Doesn't care to. He is who said Farina was part of the, quote, beatdown squad. Since I was in the area, I decided to investigate myself and expose this uncharged, dangerous murderer, something that mainstream media should be doing, but doesn't care to. He is a danger to the community. So I decided to go to his community to investigate. While I was parked on a public street, Anthony Farina and what I assumed to be his adult son came out to confront me parked on their block. I then began recording.
How you guys doing? Hey, how are you? No, I'm not lost. I'm conducting an investigation.
They asked him if he was lost.
Yeah. Old school.
I'm conducting an investigation of I got some complaints. Are you Anthony Farina?
Yeah.
Are you the correctional officer, Anthony Farina?
Yeah.
So do you have any comment? I'm an independent journalist. My name is Sean. Do you have any comment?
As soon as he says I'm Sean,
Yep.
an independent journalist, he walks away.
Yeah.
But the son doesn't.
On the brutal murder of Robert Brooks?
You had a problem?
How are you free?
You have a problem?
This is the son. You got a problem?
Are you going to beat me like he beat Robert Brooks?
Get out of here.
He said, just get out of here.
I'm on public street. I'm just, your dad just killed somebody on camera. Brutally murdered him.
No, he didn't.
It's on camera. He stomped him out.
My dad didn't murder him. I'm going to put it full regular speed so you guys could hear it. And he says it happened to Robert Brooks at Mohawk. Ed Wallace is here with us. Hi, Ed.
Farina?
Yeah.
So do you have any comment? I'm an independent journalist. My name is Sean. Do you have any comment on the brutal murder of Robert Brooks?
You had a problem?
How are you free?
You have a problem?
Are you going to beat me like he beat Robert Brooks?
Get out of here.
I'm on public street. I'm just, your dad just killed somebody on camera. Brutally murdered him. It's on camera. He stomped him out. He stomped him out.
It happened to him in Mohawk. Yeah. So I had to play that because that's how ignorant this kid is telling him it didn't. No, it happened over there. You could hear it as clear as day. You don't need more than that. This is a guy with a cell phone, and he was just sitting in his car. He saw them walking up. He's like, "Oh shit, I'm gonna just start recording." I mean, I don't know. Any takes from you guys on that? Are you surprised?
I would go ahead, JB.
I mean, I think we've all seen this before, right? I mean, this is all part of the same pie, right? These guys are not just like one way in prison and then another way out in the outside world.
Yeah. I mean, this is the guy who quit. He resigned and got his pension, right?
I wonder if that statement from the son means that they're going to try to use a defense that he was beat up in Mohawk Correctional Facility, and that's why they were transferring him, and his death is a result.
It ain't going to work. It ain't going to work.
Of the beating that he took at Mohawk. I mean, the videotape would quickly disclaim that, but I wonder if that's going to be their argument, and the kid had a little slip of the tongue. Oh, it happened in Mohawk, like they're going to try and blame an incident at Mohawk.
Yeah.
It's a lot. They could try.
I just don't see how that would jive, but they could certainly say that they had to transfer him because he had a fight at Mohawk. But that doesn't mean when he got to Marcy, he was standing on his own 2 feet at one point. They did carry him in there because there's that point, and JB, you pointed this out in your video. You see him on the ground initially when the body cam starts. You see them get him up, and then they carry him. And then there's that blank space between the van that they walk past and them coming in to Marcy. And you pointed that out so well that when they were carrying him in face down, he was still bucking a little bit, but they did a number on him before he got in that building.
He was unconscious when they took him into the infirmary. So what DutyRon's referring to is the video captures the officers surrounding him. He's in handcuffs in the outside part of the facility by the Sally Port, where you would be if you'd first come into the facility. And then they walk him by the van, and then the camera goes blank, And then the next thing we know, the camera is showing him being carried into the infirmary. Now, before I was an investigative journalist, I was a news photographer in New York City, and I covered a lot of protests. And I've seen protesters carried handcuffs by police literally hundreds of times, hundreds of guys in handcuffs, hands behind their back, being carried, okay? Not just being walked, but being carried. And when you're being carried by the police with your hands behind your back, you keep your head up because you don't trust the police to not drop you on your face. And so when I see what you see in the video with Robert Brooks being carried into the infirmary, his head is hanging loose down to the floor. And if he was conscious, his head wouldn't be hanging. His head would be up like anybody else because he wouldn't trust the police not to drop him on his face.
Interesting.
Good.
You know, I recall like when you talk about even being abused verbally by the correctional officers, besides physically, just to give you an example of how they would operate, you know, on a daily basis. This is not a rare example. It's all day long. If you're walking in the hallway in prison, you know, or you're standing someplace you're not supposed to stand, and excuse my language, but this is the way the officer will address the prisoner. Hey, you fucking asshole. What are you standing over there for? What are you, fucking stupid? Get over there. You know, that's the way they deal with you. You know, they don't say, excuse me, sir, can you step behind the line? Or you're not supposed. They deal with situations aggressively, man. Yeah. That's what they, you know, I don't think they were taught to. Oh, I hate watching that video, man. Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, that's where you see his head hanging loose.
Now, I want to put this up so everybody has an idea for Tuesday. So this is 1 through 7. Sergeant Michael Mashow, Sergeant Glenn Trombley, CO Matthew Gallagher, Nicholas Anzalone, that's the guy with the hat on backwards, and Kingsley. Kiefer was walking in right with him. Correct me if I'm wrong, JB. Robert Kessler. And then it goes on to page 2 here. Michael Fisher, Christopher Walrath, Michael Along, Shay Schaff, David Walters, Nurse Kyle Dashnor, and CO Anthony Farina, who resigned prior to suspension/termination. Farina is the bald guy who we just saw with his son out on the street. These are the original 14, and then the list expanded because we saw a female sergeant, I believe, and a lieutenant come in after the fact, and it swelled to 18 or 19, gentlemen? 18, yeah. So
17, not counting Farina's resignation.
These are some of the names that we should see in the night. If it's a 9 count, if it's 9 indictments, if there's 9 indictments against these former correction officers, these I call these guys murderers.
So everyone on this on this first slide, except for Kiefer. So 1 through 5 and 7.
Okay.
Those people should be among the 9. And then if we go to the next slide,
we are on the next.
We'll see. I think we'll see Walrath.
Yep.
And Farina for sure.
Oh yeah.
So what are we at? 8. And then the question is, do they charge Walters for telling the nurses to stay out of the infirmary? Right. You see him clearly do this in the video.
Right.
And while we don't see Walters put his hands on Brooks in the video, he instructs the nurses to stay out of the room.
Yeah.
So that action is aiding and abetting. You're acting in concert with the killers, with the people who put their hands on them. So that's, if I was a prosecutor, and I'm not, but if I was, he would be included in the group facing the top charges.
Federally, he might, Jay, be just like George Floyd case. Remember they brought 2 cases, the federal?
That's right. That's right. So those are the 9. Who gets off of that list? The nurses get off. The nurses aren't in the 9. I would look for one or both of them to be cooperating witnesses.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna have multiple people who are going to be cooperating witnesses for the state, but at the end of the day, I do believe that lesser charges will be dealt out to some of the folks that are there, and some won't get any charges, and it will be, look, we don't know, we don't have a magic ball to, we don't have a crystal ball, but at the end of the day, we're going to be there to cover it. I know JB is going to be on it. I know Conservative Felon's going to be on it. I want to quickly encourage everyone to go and subscribe. I'm going to link it in the description. Conservative Felon's on YouTube. Let's get him, 10,000 more subscribers. If you guys can go over there and support him. Also, JB Nicholas, go over and support him. Subscribe to his news page. I get the daily emails, and I thank you for those emails. He even has the audacity to ask me if I want to unsubscribe to the emails. I'm like, what? Are you crazy? Keep sending them, JB. I want those emails. So yeah, the freelance, go over there, go to his YouTube channel, hit the little bell and subscribe to it. These guys are, they're putting out the truth of what inmates' perspectives are as it pertains to correctional officers. And I've heard you many times, Fish, say there's not all bad ones in there.
Nah.
I think it's important that we talk about that, right?
Yeah, there's some good dudes in there too. Man, like I said in the beginning of the video, how can I pick the percentage? Is it 50-50? There's a lot of guys that go in there. I'm not trying to clean everything up now. I'm just speaking about reality. There's a lot of guys in there that they don't go out of their way to mess with anyone. They clock in, they do their 8 hours, they don't bother anyone. But there is an alarming number that do go out of their way. I have to say it. There's an alarming number that do. And but there's also good guys in there. There's many good guys. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing roofing jobs with them, and I wouldn't be sitting down and having dinner with their daughters. Listen, I'm from a family of law enforcement. I told you that. My father was a lieutenant. My grandfather was the commissioner. I ended up as the black sheep for many different reasons, but there's no animosity towards law enforcement. I've learned that every situation has its own set of circumstances in life, right? And we're looking at this situation, so when I say they should all be charged with murder and they should all be responsible, that's not a hate for authority. That's looking at the situation as a critical thinker, taking in the facts, looking at it from different angles, looking at that specific incident and saying that these men need to be charged with murder. That's all that is. But yeah, there's some good dudes in there,
JB, over to you.
There was something about this particular prison, though. There's an extraordinarily toxic environment in the prison.
Yes.
Who I've been speaking with and the records that I've been reading. I've been covering this story now for almost 6 weeks. I've spoken with former prisoners. I've spoken with former COs. I've spoken with the survivors of former COs. These guys, a lot of these guys on this list that we're talking about, have been served at that prison for 10 years or more. So these guys were a tight-knit crew. They had each other's backs, unquestionably. Their cover-up machine, with the assistance of the nurses, some of the nurses, was a well-oiled cover-up machine, But the signs were there in the injuries that supervision in Albany and Letitia James' office from the lawsuits should have known that these guys were way over the line.
Yeah, JB, I arrived across the street in Mid-State Correctional Facility in 2007. It is directly across the street. You could see the prison. And we all knew in Mid-State that we didn't want to go across the street to Marcy. They had that reputation in 2007. And so we're talking almost 20 years ago.
That's what I'm talking about.
All the prisoners knew in Mid-State, you don't want to go across the street to Marcy because they will beat the shit out of you. So we knew that. Mid-State was pretty bad itself too, I got to be honest. But we all knew Marcy was a lot worse. So it's finally caught up to them. That's what happened. It took this many years, but it finally came to light. You know, what happens in darkness comes to light. You know, so it took a long time. It took them killing Robert Brooks. That's what's unfortunate. It took the camera. Because if it wasn't for the camera, then they'd still be going. Status quo would still be going. So it took the camera.
There's JB's YouTube channel, and here is Conservative Felons. It's linked in the description. It's linked here in
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you to the mods, everybody. We're going to make sure in the description you can click. It's going to be an easy, because if you make people type out things, they're not going to do it. So in my description, I want to keep it so it's a clickable link to Conservative Felons YouTube, to JB's YouTube, and also important, JB's The Freelance, right? I mean, that's an important thing because
freelancenews.org.
freelancenews.org. It's an independent, it's an unbelievable chock full of information as it pertains to not just this case, but everything that's going on upstate and in the area up there, because he doesn't just cover this case. Like he said, he's been doing this for a long time. And here it is. I'm going to put it in the chat real quick. And I want to thank you gentlemen for being here, and Amazing Ant for being here for almost 2 hours. I don't do 2-hour live streams. You guys know I don't do this.
I'm starving.
Yeah. And you know, like I'm fighting this lymphoma, which is blood cancer. So I lose a lot of energy quickly. And I said to my wife, I said, you know, it's starting to snow. It's shitty outside. We're not doing anything. You mind if I jump down into the studio and do this real quick? She was like, go, babe, do it. Just go and do it. So shout out to my wife. Thank you for giving me the blessing. And to, again, my two guests, Ed Wallace, my co-host, all of the replay viewers, the live chatters, the moderators, the people who left super chats, and everyone who leaves positive engagement. We appreciate it. And listen, we're never all going to be on the same page. We're going to agree to disagree, but let's do it respectfully. If you don't agree with something that I said, my guests, my co-hosts, it's okay. Just let's be adults about it, and let's voice our opinions with respect. And as long as you do that, you can hang out here. But if once you just toe that line and disrespect my guests or the people who I have that take the time, no one's being paid to do this. We're all here on our own dime. When you start disrespecting any of my guests, whether your opinions of them are, good, bad, or indifferent, do it respectfully, or you're not going to be able to exist here. I will just simply block you, and you could just go and do that somewhere else. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to also take this time to send prayers, strength, and positive vibes to the Brooks family, to his extended family, to the people of the community up there who are hurting because of what's happened at that Marcy Correctional Facility and all New York State docks facilities where this type of behavior is happening. I want to also say that there's a lot of good people who do not support this type of behavior. There are a lot of bad people too that support it, because I'm seeing emails from people that are like telling me, how dare I, to cover this. I got this to tell you. You just suck it. At the end of the day, this has to be shouted from the rooftops. It has to be shouted out loud, and it has to be called out, because I'm retired 14 years from the police department. And any time that I had an engagement with somebody, no matter what they did, as long as they they treated me with respect, I treated them with that same respect. If they needed a bag of chips or needed something to drink, or they wanted to smoke a cigarette, I would try to accommodate them and do the right thing, because I put myself in the same shoes. What if that was me? How would I want to be treated? And it worked for me. It worked for me for over 2 decades. So that's I take that I wish that most officers would do out there, and all officers would do out there, because if that was done, it would make this a better place. It would make this world a better place. And like you said, Conservative Felon, you guys are paying a debt to the society by being incarcerated. You just want to do your time and get the hell out. Yeah, there are some bad inmates that are in there or looking to do harm, that murder people inside prison. That's a fact. But at the end of the day, that's life. We have good, bad, and indifferent, and the other. We just have to deal with it. So on behalf of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, and thank you, Amazing Ant, for being here. We want to wish everybody a great weekend. And again, one more time, prayers and strength, positive vibes to the Brooks family for justice for Robert Brooks. Thank you. for watching, and good night from New York.